Hi there, my name's Helen McCandless, and thank you so much for joining me on my channel, Business Analyst Rock, where I'll be telling you some pretty important little tips and tricks about how to be awesome business analysts. Let's get started, shall we? Today, we're going to have a look at writing business requirements, understanding a bit more about what they actually are, who they're for, and the different types that you find. After that, we're going to create some business requirements of each type so you can see exactly how they're put together. Are you ready? Do you have your pen and paper ready? Great. Let's get started. Right now, here we are with the writing business requirements section. First off, we have a shameless plug for my channel, Business Analyst Rock. I would love it if you'd subscribe, please. It means that I can make more and more of these videos for you. So please subscribe. Thank you. Firstly, let's take a look at what a business requirement is. It's really important to have a good idea about why we're doing this. Let's have a look at what a business requirement is to start with, so we know what we're working with. Let's open this text box here, and we'll find that a business requirement defines what the business stakeholder needs to carry out their business operations successfully. What do I mean by this? It means that what you're describing to the software engineer, programmer, developer has to adequately reflect what the business needs. Plus, describe those needs in a language that the business understands and can ultimately sign off on. You see, but the business usually pays for the IT project. They are the employer. So we'll go here, we'll say plus the customer. That is really important to know. This business requirement has to tell a story about what the business stakeholder needs. It could be something as simple as, I need a system that automate my manual invoicing system. Could be something like that. I'm not saying that that's a simple delivery, but it's a simple ask. All right? They're the terms that the business will think of. They're not going to think of, the JavaScript. They're going to be thinking in terms of, what does it mean to me? So the next bit we're going to have a look at now is, who is the business requirement written for? Now this is really interesting because you would immediately say it's written for the business stakeholder. Yes, and that's true. But it's also written for the test manager and team, the project board, change manager, who can then understand what you're trying to achieve. So that includes the IT team, which includes programmers and the UX team or user experience. So that's quite a few people. That document, once it's approved, can be given to any third-party vendors, other teams. In fact, it's really a foundational document when it's approved. Very important document. Next, we'll have a look at the sections of the document. The first part of the document that you find is the identification section. Now, there are two different standards for identifying a document for the records management side of things, and they are a front cover identification, which will have the title, business unit, document number, the owner, issue date, revision number, records management system number, and classification at the very least. It will have the official organisational badging on the front, so that's very important. Sometimes organisations prefer to have inside front page identification where they have a table with classification, document category, revision number, issue date, records management system number, and document status in a table. And then under that, they might have an amendment list of all the different revisions and who did what changes. They usually have a sign-off section, usually signed off by the project manager or the product owner. So you can have two different types of styles. When you go into a new organisation, just check out some documents that they already have on file and check their formatting. If they like the front cover or the inside front page, just replicate that. Take one of those already signed off documents and use it as a template. It is so handy, and you will give them exactly what they want. There's no point trying to shove a template down a customer's throat if it's not exactly what they want. You can certainly recommend, or you can show them a template and say, this is how I usually create one. And if they don't have any templates already in mind, then they might be quite grateful that you have gone to the trouble to show them a professional document standard. In the business requirements document, the first section you'll find is the executive summary. It's because sometimes requirement documents can be 70 or 100 pages long once you include all the appendices. So the executive summary would include basically the background and purpose and recommendations for what you want the person signing off on this document to do. The second bit you'll see is the introduction, and that, in slightly different wording but basically the same, has the preface, the background and purpose. It includes what's in, what's out of scope, the guiding principles that you're working to. You make a note that there's a glossary and references. I always like to put them in the appendices at the back because it ruins the flow when somebody's reading the document and they suddenly go from guiding principles to this 10-page section which is all about acronyms and terms and what they mean. It can be very confusing. So I just write a short note under the glossary and references. Please refer to Appendix 1 or Appendix A or Annex 1 or A, depending on how your organisation likes to term them. All right, so at least they know that there are some, and that's where they'll go find them. The next section will be all about the business drivers, what they say in the trade as the burning platform. Why is the business interested in doing this change, and why are they prepared to put good money into it, sometimes hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So it'll be an overview of the current environment that the organisation's in, explaining why this is important. And then if there are a number of different business drivers, then some details about each one, such as there could be a compliance requirement that is coming in at a certain date, and the software system has to be upgraded to accommodate that requirement. It's a reporting requirement, usually by government. The next section we have a look at is benefits and challenges. The benefits of the change have to be completely obvious, or why are you doing it? So your change could have a whole page full of benefits to the organisation, or it could just be 3 or 4 items. We're complying with this new legislation, or we're reducing our expenditure by this amount of money by the 30th of June. The list of challenges, I normally break them up into 3 different sections: technical challenges, change management challenges, and resources. So technical challenges are all about if the software and hardware that we're having to work with, if we have an old version of software and we need it to do some very tricky, fancy things that only the current version have, well, that's going to be a challenge that needs to be addressed. That needs to be acknowledged and a plan put in place. Change management is essentially communications. It's including people in the journey well before time, what impact this change will have on them, and getting them to come along on the journey and to help and to become champions. That way is the surest way to get people to buy into the change and to actually use it. The resources challenge is usually about the number of people. In Australia, we call them full-time equivalents, FTEs. How many people are available to do the work? Now we continue on through the document. The next one will be the current status and methodology. So what's the as-is state? What's going on at the moment? So you put in an overview and what the landscape looks like right now. The next part of the document is the current status and methodology used. Essentially what you're doing is explaining the current landscape, the business landscape, where the system lives, what it interacts with, dependencies, independencies. You can quite often use a nice diagram, and that shows information comes from here, goes to there, is processed in this way and reported in that way. One of those diagrams is always useful in a document, because you'll find that the managers will use that in meetings to explain what's going on. So you can actually do an as-is and a to-be diagram if you'd like to do that. I find the current status especially is important. And then I usually say something about the future state. Write down the method of what you did to get the information. You might actually be writing down the different data sources you accessed, but certainly you'll be detailing which groups of people you spoke to, what team they were in, were you in a workshop, did you do one-on-one, what their specialty area is, whether they're subject matter expert about a specific thing, such as finance, procurement, HR, that sort of thing. And then to make life really easy for everybody, I always like to include the priority ranking that I use, the method I use. So you can use the Moscow, think of must have, should have, would have, could have, or just a very basic highly desirable, optional. It's just a way of telling people this is what you use to explain what was really important and what was not as important. When you go into a new organisation, we'll find out that they have a specific way of describing how they should rank the importance of something. Whatever that is, have a look at it. If it suits what you're doing, then I would recommend that you use that. The next stage is a more detailed recommendations. On the front page for the executive summary, you had these as well. This is the specific recommendations that they have to sign off and what you want them to do. So that's in the body. So the next thing we've got here are the appendices. Well, appendices, or annexes as they're sometimes called, can be very long. So essentially they start off with the glossary, which is all the terms and words and acronyms will be included in there with an explanation. There'll be references to documents, especially internal documents that have been written before, or documents from other projects that impact what you're doing. There'll be a table of the key stakeholders you consulted with, and mine usually ends up being about 60 or 70 people. Sometimes it's 10 people in a workshop. Most of mine are one-on-one or one-on-two or three. I make a big effort in the discovery stage to talk to as many people from every level as possible, because that is the first question that's asked when this sort of document is tabled to a senior management team is, was everybody consulted? So when you go around to do your business requirements, always ask that person, is there someone else I should be talking to about this? And go follow those leads. It's much better and more professional to have a huge list of people that you have talked to than to talk to 3 or 4 people and for some senior manager to go, what about Bill down the corridor? We can't leave him out. and you go, oh, I didn't think it was important, but then you find out he has the power to make life hard for your boss. Then he feels that he's not being excluded. So it's a very delicate matter consulting stakeholders. It's not just about what they know, it's about their power in the whole structure. Include any relevant data tables. If you've had data results from queries, include them, but also include some of the methodology that was used and what the data means. So don't just put in a whole bunch of data. If you're going to put in tables, put a analysis under each table as to what this means. Otherwise, you've wasted your time and no one will look at it. The key business processes that are impacted. Say if you're doing a procurement system that's going to be improved, then they'll obviously have the purchasing, then they'll have a system for returns, they'll have a system for goods not received. So draw up all those business processes. You need to have those in there. The compliance instruments. Now, that's a fancy name for any laws, any standards, any policies that mandate that the organisation must do something in regard to this project. And it could be as simple as providing a report by 5 o'clock at the end of the day on any risk incidents and who that report would go to. Then I usually go into the actual requirements, and that's where they start to get quite long. So you have high-level business requirements, and we'll have a look at how these are actually created. High-level business requirements, which were more strategic, and what the business manager would say, I want it to display a dashboard for me every morning so I can see the full real-time status of what we're doing. Then they'll have functional requirements with the actual functions, such as processing invoices could be a function, or non-functional requirements, which are more about the characteristics and also things especially like ICT security or download times. If you're in a remote area, what's the tolerance level for how long something should take to download? Right, so there's quite a few things there, aren't they? It's not a short document. Now, if anybody asks you how long it takes you to do one of these business requirements document, I always say 3 months to start with. It's a month to do your discovery, just work out what's what, where's where, start your interviews, all that sort of thing. A month then to be writing and asking more questions and getting more information together, having a draft ready. Could possibly be 6 weeks, depends on how much there is. You need at least 2 or 3 weeks for management to do the initial review and approval before it goes up to the higher levels to get the final sign-off. Sign-off doesn't happen till after at least the 3 months. I worked on requirements for 6 months because a system was so huge, and it was like so long as you can produce progress reports along the way, management will be happy so long as they can see that things are progressing. And if you create a few artifacts like the overall processes, the overall lay of the land, what the system is now and what it could be in the future, they're all good artifacts for managers to take to meetings. So now we'll just have a quick plug for my channel, Business Analyst Rock. I'm very excited to be delivering this channel to you and all my little tips and tricks for over 20 years in the industry. Please subscribe and please tell your friends about it, because I want to be creating this for a long time and to help as many people as I can. In fact, I've got a personal mission to create 10,000 business analysts before I die. So, that's a big ask. So please subscribe so I can help more people. Thank you. Now, we're going to have a look at what other things should you think about when you create business requirements. Of course, when you're writing requirements, you've got to keep in the back of your mind quite a few other things. So let's have a look at this little box here, and let's start brainstorming. So the first thing that comes to my mind is to think critically about the topic. So by that I mean, what are you trying to achieve? What's your overall outcome? Does it align with the corporate strategic vision? And what does the business really want out of this? So you have to do some thinking. Read some of the vision statements on the intranet or the business annual report. Think carefully about what's the business really trying to achieve. Because what you write tells the developers what to create. So it's sort of like a whispering game where the business tells you something, then you whisper it to the developer, they create something, and then we show it back to the business who say, I didn't say that. That's not what I wanted. So you have to be really careful about understanding what the business wants and how they're going to use it. So that gives you a better idea to describe what should be built. When you're doing this, you're using evidence-based decision making. So use facts and figures. Don't just go with what one person glibly said to you, like, oh, we just want it to do everything. Really have a look at what's available, what are they doing now, what could be improved. Just because they haven't asked for something doesn't mean it shouldn't be included in the requirements. With your experience, you should be able to bring some extra value to this project. You should be able to go, actually, I can see that you're double handling this. And so you could write an extra requirement that stipulates that the system processes something in the back end without any human intervention, thereby saving them a manual step. But they might not have actually asked you for it because they'd be so used to doing that manual step. So it's really important not to accept at face value what anybody says to you. Always use your own thinking. Always say, does that make sense? Does that contradict what somebody else has said? Right? So that includes validating information with a second source. Because you might find something out from a senior manager who has an agenda, or who might be leaving at the end of the month, so they just want something quick and dirty. And when you talk to the operating team leader, you might find out what's really needed is something completely different. So you need to validate things. You need to find out what's really important and go with that, all right? So that includes talking to a very wide audience of people. And that's why I was saying before that I often interview up to 70 people when I'm doing my discovery phase. So discovery phase, talk to up to 70 people if you can. I know that sounds excessive, but goodness me, you will know so much once you've done that. You'll know the topic inside out and outside in, and you will know things that lots of people don't know. And it will make what you do exemplary, all right? It will help you see the problem from all angles. Now, try and work out the unintended consequences of this change. By that I mean, if you stop doing something, does somebody else rely on that? And if they did, does it matter? Or do you need to talk to them about putting something in place to fix that? It's often well-meaning when changes are made, but if people, once again, people don't have the whole picture, and that's your job to have. That's why you've got to talk to a lot of people, right? Find out, well, if you do this, Sarah downstairs doesn't get that information to put in the monthly report. So can she get that information from somewhere else? Or do we need to build it in that report is generated for her? And the other thing to look at is dependencies. By dependencies, I mean projects that are upstream of you, which are effectively ahead of you. Are they creating a capability that your project needs so it can deliver successfully? And conversely, downstream, projects that are after yours, are they depending or waiting for you to develop something so they can be successful? The importance of this is if your project decides to cut a certain capability because of time or resources, or it's just not deemed important, you need to be able to sit in that meeting and tell the project manager, Project 234 is depending on us to create this so that they can deliver X. What can we do about that? Your project manager can go talk to theirs. They can work out, is there a workaround? Do we still need to do it? That decision's not really yours. But what's important is for you to do due diligence to tell them so people know that you're not just floating like an island. There are interdependencies. All right? So that's quite a bit to think about, isn't it? Now let's get into the fun bit. How do you write a business requirement? There's a lot of different ways to do it. Different organisations and different business analysts do it in various ways. Over the years, I've taken the view that anything I write in a business requirement format needs to be testable by the test team. You'll see that in a minute when we create some examples of business requirement statements. So I take the view of if somebody else can't take my business requirement and say, did the system deliver this, yes or no, then I haven't written that requirement properly. Let's have a look now at what's involved in business requirement statements. First off, let's have a look at the stakeholder requirement, which is normally how the business stakeholder or your customer would express what they want in their own terms. So a good example of this might be, we want a screen on the front counter so that we can enter customer contact details. Okay? So what the real requirement is here is that the system needs to have a displayed page to enter customer contact details, and the people behind the counter need to have the right permissions to be allowed to enter those details. So having a monitor on the front counter, you can write that in as that's one thing, but they need to actually have the permissions and they need to have a page where they can enter those customer details. And you might have to even do a bit of a wireframe, a mock-up of what that page would look like and what the fields would be. Now, the user story. The user story is actually written in a more structured way, following a formula that actually explains from the customer's viewpoint what they want and why they want it. The formula is, as a type of user, I want X function so that I can Y, right? So an example of this would be, as a team leader, I want my team's leave displayed on one screen so that I can plan my monthly roster. The function was a display page where all their team's leave is displayed, and also that they don't have to look at all the emails that have come through saying, can I have next Friday off because I've got to take the kids to a school play, anything like that. So it makes it very easy for the team leader to do their work instead of manually putting all that information together in an Excel spreadsheet. And as the business analyst, you could also suggest, would you like that leave screen to be accessed by all of your team, and they can actually put in what their leave requirements are and you can approve it online? So that gets rid of all those emails and all that horrible stuff that the team lead has to worry about. So that way you can actually improve their workflow, and that's a really good idea, obviously. You're making life easier for people. Next requirement that you'll find in business requirements documents are actually business rules. These are super important. Every business function relies on a set of business rules to operate. They need to work within certain parameters according to policy, according to the law, like who's allowed to approve things, who can be a delegate for a certain amount of money to be spent. There's a whole bunch of rules, and it's your job to find them out. So this is when you need to talk to the subject matter experts and tease that information out of them. It's core to the system working. One of your biggest requirements in your statement document will be that business rules need to be able to be changed on an ad hoc basis when external rules change. So you need to be able to have that flexibility. Right. So you can't have your business rules hard-coded into the system. They need to be configurable so that you can say instead of it being 10%, it's now gone up to 15%, and that you can change that and do a global change from a certain date. You need to make sure that that's in there as well. An example of a business rule would be if a particular module, say a finance module, returns yes to a specific question, flag the risk issues log for immediate attention. Right, I'll just move this up so you can see it. So if somebody's working within the finance module and they have a box which said yes or no, the question may be, is this expenditure above $1 million, or is it unapproved spending? If you say yes to that question, immediately in the back end, the risk issues log for that system is flagged so that an email then workflows through to the right person to check that out. So now let's have a look at high business requirements. These are essentially strategic requirements, but they do give a good overview of what is needed by the business and are quite often referred to by business managers. They need to be able to see that what they've asked for has been included. Okay? So a high-level business requirement could be, from a manager's point of view, say your system, you're running just a pilot and it's only for one business unit. All right, maybe it's just for the risk management unit and that's just a local business unit. So maybe we write the ability to scale the system for enterprise-wide or organization use. So that basically tells the programmers that they need to make sure that it's got the ability to be rolled out to maybe potentially thousands of people who all would need to log in and work within the system. So that means that they build their tables in a different way than if they built the tables of information in a very small, discrete way for a discrete boutique function. So that could be an example of a high-level requirement. Note how I write ability to scale, ability to. I normally use ability to in front of every single requirement. It means that when the test team come to write their testing statements, they can easily turn this into a yes-no response. They look at the system, they say, we want the ability to scale the system. Has the system got that ability to scale? Yes, no. And then when they write up their test results, they can easily say it failed 20% of the requirements and these were the ones that they failed on, because it's easy to create yes-no statements. So I think if you keep it as simple as possible, then that helps people further up the line. Now, functional business requirements, they're normally detailed ones, okay? So they're about the various functions. They can be things like taking in information, processing information, workflowing information, creating products at the end, including reports. Okay, you can be as detailed as you like, but try only to make one requirement for one thing so that it can be tested. So if you say ability to create these screens and workflow that thing, and then display it over here and then put it into a data screen. That's like 3 or 4 requirements on their own. I recommend bring it down to the very basic level. So one functional business requirement at a time that can be tested individually, because then it's very easy to see where the system's fallen down. An example of this would be the ability to, now some people would write the system will, but I like to say the ability to, because we don't know if it will or won't for a start. You might actually not do that, but the ability to talks about capability, and that's really what we're all about. So the ability to create a daily report at 6 p.m. using the, let's say it's the XYZ template provided, okay? So you might want the report, but you want it in a specific format. And so you actually attach the templates in the appendices for the developers to use, right? And you can say refer appendix 6. Now we go through here for a non-functional requirement. Non-functional refers to qualities and the characteristics. The main things I normally include here are security, usability, download times, especially if you're dealing with a system that's centralized in head office and then has remote depots that are many miles away. So it's important that download times be stipulated as the minimum download time that's acceptable. An example of a non-functional requirement would be the display screens will comply with the WCAG2 guidelines, which is, of course, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines version 2. I think it's version 2.1, I think. So that's all about accessibility and usability. So it's very easy then for the usability team to go through and assess if each one of the screens complies with that. We've had a look at what business requirements are. We've then had a quick look at who they're written for and checked out all their different sections. They're very busy documents. There's a lot of stuff in there. Don't be upset if they're really, really super long. That's just the name of the game. And then when you're creating them, you need to think about other things, think critically about the whole project, what the business is trying to achieve. Try and be the champion for the business. All you're really doing is explaining to the techies what the business needs. So you're really the champion of the business. And that's a good thing, actually, because business is normally the ones who are paying you. And then we had a look at some different requirement statements, how they can be written up. There's any number of different ways of doing it, of course. These are just the ways that I like to do it. But certainly writing everything that's clear and understandable by the business and also by the test team and the developers. So what you can look out for next is the exciting launch of the B3A Club, which I'm still not telling you about at this very minute. It's coming, and it's coming soon, and it's something that you don't want to miss out on. But also, check out next week's live session on asking the right questions to create your business requirements document. So now we've spent some time looking at the structure of the document. The next thing I want to look at is how do you get the information that you need? What questions can you ask a senior manager? What questions can you ask a team leader or a subject matter expert to get the exact information that you need? And so you become an awesome business analyst. I did have one question come through from Amelia, who wondered if I had a really simple, easy to use and easy to follow business requirements template that I could recommend. And yes, I do. One is in the works. I'm working on it right now, and I will be letting you know as soon as that's ready. Thank you so much for your time, and please remember to subscribe to my Business Analyst Rock channel.